The morning sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a pale glow on the kitchen table where the DNA test kits lay. I stared at them, heart racing, fingers trembling. Today was our 30th wedding anniversary, a milestone we had celebrated with smiles, laughter, and memories we had both carefully curated. Or so I thought. My husband, Michael, had always been calm, measured, the type of man who never let emotions dictate his actions. That's what made this moment all the more terrifying. 30 years of carefully constructed lies, half-truths, and silent deceptions had been hiding behind our family's facade. I had thought I was clever, untouchable, shielding my secrets behind charm, routine, and the illusion of devotion. But the kits on the table told me one thing. Michael had finally decided to uncover the truth. He had waited, planned, and now the reckoning had arrived. I remembered the early days, when our love had seemed effortless enough that I believed I could keep certain truths buried. The children had been innocent, pure, unaware of the web I had woven. Every school event, every birthday, every holiday, I had smiled and nodded, pretending the past didn't exist. Michael had trusted me implicitly, never once questioning, never once suspecting the cracks hidden beneath the surface. Now as he entered the room, his calm presence made my stomach knot with anxiety. There was no accusation in his eyes, only the steady gaze of a man who had decided to know everything. Finally, "I got the results," he said quietly, setting a small envelope on the table. My hands shook. I wanted to look away, to pretend, to escape the inevitable confrontation, but the air was thick, suffocating with anticipation. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to beg, to plead, to fabricate another lie, but I knew it would be futile. Michael's patience was not weakness. It was calculated endurance. 30 years of trust built between us was now the lens through which every deception would be revealed. The envelope on the table was more than paper and test results. It was the culmination of decades of choices, a mirror reflecting every betrayal I had carefully hidden. I braced myself as he tore open the envelope, each paper inside a silent herald of truth. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and frantic, echoing in the kitchen as he began to read. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in with the weight of what was about to unfold. 30 years of lies, meticulously constructed, were about to come crashing down. His eyes scanned the pages, unblinking, steady, almost clinical. I watched, frozen, as the truth I had buried for decades began to surface. The DNA results were clear, irrefutable, and there was no room left for denial. The children, our beloved children, were not entirely mine. My husband's silence was more terrifying than any shouted accusation could have been. It was a calm that carried the weight of inevitability, a quiet force that demanded acknowledgement. I remembered every lie that had led to this point. The small white lies about medical histories, the omitted details about certain relationships, the fabricated explanations about vacations and absences. Each one had seemed insignificant at the time, a tiny shield against the perceived chaos of truth. But now, all those shields had crumbled in an instant. My careful facade had been shattered by evidence I could not manipulate or deny. Michael finally spoke, his voice low but unwavering. "I needed to know," he said simply. "For the sake of the children, for the sake of honesty in this family. I needed to know the truth." There was no anger, no malice, only the weight of disappointment and betrayal. It cut deeper than any shouting match, any dramatic confrontation could. It was the quiet devastation of realizing that trust, once broken, leaves an unhealable scar. The children came into the kitchen, drawn by the tension, unaware of the storm about to envelop their lives. Their eyes searched ours, sensing the gravity without understanding the specifics. I tried to offer a reassuring smile, a feeble attempt to maintain some control, but it faltered under Michael's steady gaze. The truth could not be softened, could not be sugar-coated. It demanded acknowledgement, confrontation, and eventual reckoning. I sank into a chair, the weight of decades pressing down on me. Every carefully constructed narrative, every manipulated explanation, had led to this moment. Michael's calm, methodical approach to uncovering the truth had left me powerless, stripped of the defenses I had relied on for so long. And in that moment, I realized that this was not just about DNA tests or deception. It was about the fragile threads of trust, stretched to their breaking point. As Michael began explaining the results to the children, the room filled with quiet gasps, stifled tears, and the tremulous shock of a family confronted with long-hidden truths. My world, built over 30 years, crumbled silently around me. And yet, in the midst of despair, I sensed the inevitable consequences of my choices approaching. A reckoning I could neither prevent nor escape. The room was heavy with silence, broken only by the occasional sob or whispered question from the children. Their faces mirrored confusion, fear, and a fragile understanding that the life they had known was far more complicated than they had ever imagined. I could see Michael's pain in the way he held himself, restrained yet unwavering, as if the weight of 30 years of lies could be borne only through quiet strength. I tried to speak, to offer explanations, but the words stuck in my throat. There was no justification that could undo the years of deception, no apology capable of erasing the damage. Michael looked at me with an intensity that cut straight through pretense. "This isn't just about the tests," he said softly, yet every word carried the force of finality. "It's about honesty, accountability, and the respect that every member of this family deserves." I felt a cold panic settle over me. The realization that I had underestimated his resolve, his patience, and his unwavering commitment to truth. For 30 years, I had manipulated, concealed, and redirected blame, thinking I could maintain control. But Michael had waited, observing quietly, gathering facts, and now, with the clarity of irrefutable evidence, he had stripped me of every illusion I had relied upon. The children, too young to fully grasp the nuances yet old enough to feel betrayal, looked to Michael for guidance. His calm demeanor, his methodical explanations, provided a fragile anchor amid the emotional storm. And as they processed the reality of their parentage, I saw the consequences of my choices unfold with devastating precision. There was no dramatic confrontation needed. Truth had a way of asserting itself, quietly but irreversibly. Hours later, when the initial shock had begun to settle, Michael sat me down. The conversation was not about anger or punishment. It was about the consequences of long-term deception. "You've built a life on lies," he said, voice steady. "And now the foundation has crumbled. You will face the consequences, and the family will need time to heal without the interference of further deception." The weight of those words pressed down like a physical force, leaving me no option but to accept the reality I had tried so hard to hide. By the end of the day, the house was quiet, the children processing the revelations, and I was left to confront my actions alone. 30 years of carefully crafted lies had finally met the unyielding force of truth, and the repercussions would echo for years to come. Michael's patience, intelligence, and steadfast commitment to justice had ensured that deception could no longer thrive. And I realized, too late, that every choice carries consequences that cannot be avoided. The anniversary, once a celebration of love and commitment, had transformed into a reckoning. A quiet, devastating, and inescapable reckoning that revealed not only the depth of my lies, but also the strength, resilience, and unwavering moral compass of the man I had underestimated for 3 decades.